Today we are talking anticipated releases. So at the start of January, I told you all about the books I was excited to see released in the first quarter of the year, so January, February and March. Today we are going to be talking about April, May and June, and there are lots of books coming out in this quarter. There are 35 books that I want to keep my eye on over the next 3 months. I'm obviously not going to be buying all 35 of them, but I would like to keep my eye on them. And I'm going to start by talking about Let the Bad Times Roll by Alice Slater, which has just come out. It came out at the very beginning of the month. I have followed Alice Slater for a number of years. I really love her podcast where she talks about books with Bethany Rutter. And I also read her thriller novel debut, Death of a Bookseller, a couple of years ago, and I did really enjoy it. So I'm very intrigued to see what she does with her latest book. It came out in hardback last year and this is the paperback release. It's about a very unusual dinner party between 5 people that share a connection through this guy, Daniel, and there are lots of secrets that come out at this dinner party in, I'm expecting, quite a sinister way. Also having just come out at the start of the month is Unapologetic Love Story by Elle McNichol. So I have read a lot of Elle McNichol's middle grade and young adult books. This is her adult fiction debut and I'm really excited to read this, but I think I probably will wait for it to come out in paperback unless I hear absolutely incredible things, which in fairness is a possibility. This is the story about a very popular London it girl whose life is being investigated by a journalist. It is a romance about them not intending to fall for one another, but of course it's a romance book, so we have an idea of how it might unfold. McNichol's books always have really fantastic autistic representation, and I would be really keen to read this in an adult novel. Open Heaven by Sean Hewitt has just come out. Again, this is another one that came out in hardback last year, and this is the paperback, and I have heard so many people absolutely rave this book, particularly within the Irish bookish community. Sean Hewitt is originally a poet, and this is his debut novel, and it is about a very intense and intimate relationship between 2 teenage boys in a small village over one very transformative year. And this is meant to be quite a literary, poetic exploration of the agony of adolescence. Favorite Daughter by Morgan Dick is one that was on my radar when it came out in hardback, but I ended up choosing not to pick it up because another book came out at a similar time that had a very similar cover and a very similar title and a relatively similar premise as well. And I ended up pre-ordering that one instead. And I actually just thought that book was okay. Would be intrigued to see whether I got it completely wrong and should have pre-ordered this in hardback, not the other one. This novel is about 2 women who do not know that they are sisters and share a father, and their lives are thrust together after he passes away. The book that I read last year that was a relatively similar premise was also about sisterhood and there being a favorite daughter. As I said, I would be intrigued to see how they measure up to one another. Beth O'Leary has a new hardback coming out, The Name Game. I'm actually a little bit behind on reading Beth O'Leary's books. There are 2 books from her that are out in paperback that I haven't read yet. So I definitely want to read those in paperback before I get around to reading this hardback. And it is about 2 people who are newcomers to a very small island community looking to kind of reset their lives. Whatever Happened to Madeline Stone by Louise O'Neill. This is another book that Whatever Happened to Madeline Stone by Louise O'Neill. This is a book that I've already spoken about at length because I was lucky enough to get a proof copy, so I got to read this early. I have pre-ordered the hardback because I want it for my shelves. All the Other Mothers Hate Me by Sarah Harmon is coming out in paperback. And this is a satirical novel that explores motherhood and specifically that kind of school run community and how mothers end up interacting at the school gates and the personal social politics that end up happening. I will either think this novel is really annoying or absolutely love it. There is unlikely to be any in between. Everything That Is Beautiful by Louise Nealon is the next book from the author that brought us Snowflake, which I read a few years ago, I think in 2020, and I really enjoyed that book. This is a novel that is told through the perspectives of 3 different women. Lives are complexly impacted when a family secret comes to the surface. The Book Witch by Mega Schaefer is coming out, and I am so annoyed that this is coming out in hardback. I have really enjoyed Meg Schaefer's previous books. The Wishing Game was my favorite book in the year that I read it, and then I really enjoyed her second book, The Lost Story, which I read last year. Her next book is coming out in hardback, and I don't want to buy it in hardback. I have her previous books in paperback. I'm gonna wait for the paperback, but I'm really frustrated about it. Her books are low fantasy. And I wouldn't necessarily describe them as like cozy fantasy, although I feel like they're in like slightly the same realm. But what I really appreciated about her storytelling was how she incorporates a kind of meta approach to storytelling and a love for storytelling and books within her own narrative. I'm sure it's going to be the same for this one because it is literally called The Book Witch. I describe her books as having the energy of a magical middle grade, but for an adult reader. Also out in April is Into the Wreck by Susanna Dickey. This is about a trio of siblings who are all trying to mourn their father, but he is someone that they didn't actually really know. It's another novel that explores the complexity of family and is also told from multiple perspectives. I Know How This Ends by Holly Smale is coming out in April, and Holly Smale is the author of lots of different books. I knew her kind of growing up for the Geek Girl series, and I also read her adult debut, The Cassandra Complex, a couple of years ago, and I really liked it. This is another adult novel from her, and similarly it is like a contemporary speculative novel. And this explores Margot's life when she has a vision of her future and how becoming privy to that vision alters how she approaches the rest of her life. I love a contemporary book that just has like a bit of a thought experiment to it that you do like kind of have to suspend your disbelief a little bit with. Sometimes it can be done really badly, sometimes it can be done really well. Because it's Holly Smale, I'm expecting it to be done very well. Rainbow Rowell has a new book coming out, Cherry Baby. It has been quite a long time since I read a Rainbow Rowell book. I read Fangirl when I was like maybe 18 years old, and I read a couple of other Rainbow Rowell books, but I haven't really engaged with their writing for quite a long time. It's about a woman named Cherry whose husband is kind of catapulted to fame for the creation of a comic strip that is being turned into a Hollywood movie. And the main character in this is based on her, but it's not exactly like a favorable representation of her. And the novel is about how her life is impacted by that, but also what she gets up to when her husband is off making his Hollywood film and whether there is a better romance out there for her. Softcore by Brittany Newell was a book that was on my radar at hardback, and I'm now more intrigued now that it's on paperback. This has been described as a sex work satire where a woman that is involved in that industry becomes even more deeply embroiled in it when her boyfriend disappears. And she finds herself like exploring the kind of dark underbelly of this work. Fruit Fly by Josh Silver is coming out. I think this is Josh's adult debut. I think Josh has written some young adult books before. We're following a writer named Mallory who 7 years ago was kind of catapulted to like literary recognition, but since then has been struggling with writer's block until she meets Leo, who is at a very difficult stage in his life. He's homeless, he's an addict, he is selling sex on the streets, and Mallory decides that he is going to be the inspiration for what she writes next. It sounds like unlike anything I've ever read before. At the end of the month, Kay Tempest has another novel coming out, Having Spent Life Seeking. I have really loved Kay's poetry. I've been a big fan of their work for a number of years, but I've never read any of their like longer writing. And I don't really know anything about this one other than it is about someone like returning to their hometown. Then moving into May, Heap Earth Upon It by Chloe Michelle Howarth is coming out. This is the same author that wrote Sunburn, which is recommended to me all of the time, and I still haven't read it. So I do want to read that before I read this one. This is set in the 1960s in Ireland, and like many Irish novels, it is about family and siblings and secrets, and I don't need to know much more other than that. The latest paperback from Emily Henry is coming out. It is Great Big Beautiful Life. I remember there was like quite mixed responses to this when it came out in hardback. I am now up to date with reading Emily Henry books, so when this comes out in paperback I probably will end up picking up a copy. I think this is meant to be like quite different to some of the stuff that she's written before, but is still like a rom-com, so I'm intrigued to see what I would think given there have been such like mixed opinions on it. Table for One by Emma Gannon is coming out, and I loved the cover for this when it was out in hardback, and I was so hoping that they didn't change it too much for the paperback, and they have like changed it a little bit, but not too much, and I still really like the paperback jacket. I heard so many good things about it when it came out in hardback, and all I really know about the premise is that it basically expands on this idea of like table for one, like feeling confident and comfortable doing things solo as a single woman. And I just think that premise is like so important. I think it is important for everyone to be able to do things independently, but I think there is a real like power and beauty and particular in women doing it. I still do things like this now, even though I'm in a very like happy, committed, loving, long-term relationship where I do things solo. But I did find it really like formative to start doing things on my own when I didn't have a partner, like going to restaurants on my own, going on holiday on my own, going to the cinema, going to museums on my own. So I'm very excited to see that depicted in a novel. Catfight by Kit Conway is coming out, and this is one where they've changed the jacket massively for the paperback. I think possibly to appeal to a broader audience, although maybe like a very specific audience. Like this is very much giving Leanne Moriarty and about something dark that happens in a kind of picturesque, suburban, everything is as it should be kind of community. Sweet Heat by Bolu Babalola is coming out. I think this is the same characters that were in her previous novel Honey and Spice, which I absolutely loved. Like I loved the chemistry between those two characters. It was set in a UK university campus, and I think this picks up the story of the same characters when they're a little bit older. I just loved the chemistry between those two characters, so I'd be really excited to revisit them. The first non-fiction book I'm going to talk about is How Queer Bookshops Change the World by AJ West. I love books about books. I love non-fiction books about books. I love books about bookshops. I love books about being queer. So this is combining all of that into one book. I think the title is fairly what it says on the tin. By Your Side by Ruth Jones is coming out. And this is one that's probably just like on my radar, but I probably won't end up picking up a copy because I haven't really kept up with Ruth Jones' new books for the past few years. I read Never Greener in I think like 2019 and I absolutely loved it, but I've not actually read anything from her since. So this is just kind of like on my radar. Towards the end of May, Our Deadly Summer by Sarah Breen and Emer McLysa is coming out. These are the authors of the Aisling series, which is like this very popular, like iconic contemporary fiction series set in Ireland that follows kind of a relatively stereotypical type of like Irish girl that you would refer to as an Aisling. This is something that is a little bit different than that, in that it is much darker. It is about a pair of friends reuniting after 20 years apart. And the reason they haven't spoken to each other is because the last time they did, they buried a body together. I'm not going to get this one in hardback. I will wait for the paperback for this one. I'm intrigued by The Low Job by Grace Alexander. However, I have read a few books that explore kind of similar topics to this, and I haven't always got on with them. But it is about a young woman named Lily Lowe who is caught in a compromising position with her boss, who just happens to be a married politician. And suddenly the spotlight is thrust upon this woman. So I'm imagining it's going to explore like the nature of fame and power dynamics and politics, which are all topics that I'm interested in. Just sometimes I feel like books like this I haven't always got on with. Ripeness by Sarah Moss is coming out in paperback, and I don't need to know what this is about. Every single Sarah Moss book that I have read, I have completely loved. I will read this, I will probably love it. A Good Person by Kirsten King first intrigued me because the cover looks fantastic, and then I read the premise and I was like, oh my god, I want to read this. It is about Lillian, who is dating this guy called Henry, and they are having a great time. But one night in his flat, they end up in a massive argument, and she decides that she's going to perform a hex on him that she found on the internet. And then turns out the hex actually works and he ends up dead. Does that not just sound like the best book you'll ever read? Another non-fiction book, Kate Lister has a new book coming out, and it is called Flick, which is a great title, and it also has a great cover to go with it. I first learned about Kate Lister because of her podcast, Betwixt the Sheets. And then I read her previous book, The Curious History of Sex, and thought it was amazing. So she is like basically like a sex historian. All of the work that she does I find super interesting, and this book is specifically focused on female pleasure. Now moving into June publications, although staying with non-fiction, Receipts from the Bookshop is coming out. This is by Katie Clapham, and this non-fiction book is her telling us about her life as a bookseller. It takes a look at a year in her life, in her job, and as I said, I love books about books, books about bookshops, so this is perfect for that. All Grown Up by Daisy Buchanan is similar to the Ruth Jones book. I feel like this is just like on my radar, but I'm probably not going to get around to getting it. I've never actually read a Daisy Buchanan book. She's just someone that has kind of been on my radar in like the bookish world. This is about a woman who thinks that like it is time for a new phase in her life because her daughters are all grown up. They're not relying on her so much and she has the opportunity to get a bit more freedom in her life. I like the idea of it exploring those like mother-daughter dynamics. Births, Deaths and Marriages by Laura Barnett came out last year in hardback, so this is the paperback release. And it is about a group of 6 friends that met at university. And at that time, they were completely inseparable. However, as their lives have gone in different directions, they haven't been in contact as much. And an engagement party throws the gang back together once again. However, we know over the next 12 months, there is going to be a birth, a death, and a marriage in the friendship group. But who? That sounds like a very intriguing premise. And I am also really interested in books that look at how like friendships evolve over a number of years. One of the young adult books on my radar is The Heirs by Farida Abike Ayomede. This is from the author of Ace of Spades, which I read a few years ago and thought was brilliant. I don't even need to know anything about this book. I think it's about like secrets in a family, but that is as much as I need to know. I just like trust this author to create an amazing book. Lex Croucher has a new book coming out, The Unmagical Life of Briar Jones. I have read a few Lex Croucher books and I've kind of like followed them online for a number of years and I've really enjoyed all the books that I've read from them. I think this one is like more kind of like heavily in the fantasy realm than some of their previous work. I probably won't buy it at hardback, but definitely will keep it on my radar for paperback. Laura Jane Williams has a new book coming out, The Last to Know. I have read quite a few of Laura Jane Williams' rom-com books and I have completely loved all of them, but I am like a few books behind on keeping up with their writing, so I'd like to catch up before I end up picking this one up. But I think they are someone who I'm going to want to read like all of their books. And then finally, another non-fiction book. David Goldblatt has a new book coming out, Injury Time: Football in a State of Emergency. If you don't know, my kind of second love after books is football. And I also find it really fascinating to think about contextualizing football in wider societal and political landscapes. I think particularly in Britain, there are such strong links between society and politics and football. And this book really analyzes that in the modern age. There we have it. They are my anticipated releases over the next few months. Do let me know if you are intrigued by any of these books too. Have you pre-ordered any of them? Are you going to be buying them? Or do you think there is something that I've missed? Is there something that is on your radar that you really want to read that I haven't even thought about? Also, for any of the books that are coming out in paperback that previously came out in hardback, if you have read those, do let me know if I should prioritize picking them up. That is it from me today. I hope you're well and I'll speak to you in my next video.